Real quick, I was just for a little bit of advice for our listeners out there. My therapist told me the other day, when you're dealing with high levels of stress, just talk about David Harbour.
Would it be so bad if an 84-year-old got into heroin?
Welcome to the Cat Organizational Podcast.
You idiot. It's written down in front of you idiot.
This is like the buffalo chicken wrap of answers.
I haven't heard about hot orcs in a while.
We were so horny for motion controls in 2005.
I can't wait to come back and tell you how it was Noah's Ark, you asshole.
I would also like to retroactively say I've never had cotton candy acid.
So Andrew's 100% doing a voice, right?
Everybody get off IMDb now. Time to record.
This episode and probably this whole podcast is a mistake.
Hello, and welcome to Debate This, the show where no one is right, but someone is definitely wrong. In this show, we talk about comic books, video games, and pretty much anything that may spark joy in these weird, dark times.
There are not many things that do spark joy in these weird dark times.
No.
You know, when we record things, I typically think, like, is this going to be topical when this episode drops? And I think it will. I think that this could be recorded anytime between March and probably
August,
and it's still going to be topical.
Yeah.
Following up on what was a thorough deep dive that Kyle led us into over the MCU and Disney Plus a few weeks back, which now all those dates don't mean anything to anyone.
Man. What a waste of time that was.
We're going to put that one back in the proverbial Disney vault.
Yeah. We're going to re-release it just with Kyle very flatly repeating the new release dates whenever we talk about it.
Yeah.
Winter Soldier comes out November 4th. Like, cut in every...
Well, the reality is that Black Widow was the next coming movie, and its May 1st release date is now pushed back to November 6th. So in a world where the only certainty that we now have is that I will not wear real pants today, tomorrow, or for the foreseeable future, we here at Debate This, we want to help calm you by talking about David Harbour, or at least his character in Black Widow. And,
this is now the Dave Harbour cast.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about David Harbour's character in the Black Widow, and more specifically, the team that he is part of in the Marvel Universe, the Winter Guard.
Real quick, I was just for a little bit of advice for our listeners out there. My therapist told me the other day, when you're dealing with high levels of stress, just talk about David Harbour. That's what I've been told to do.
Just hearing his name has heart rate lowering properties.
When I'm on calls with clients and things are getting pretty feisty, I just take a pause, I take a beat, and we talk about David Harbour for just like a second.
Well, now I have two things before we dive in. One, Todd, what do you define as real pants?
I've worn a belt once in the past 5 weeks.
Good.
And that was only because my wife and I walked somewhere to go pick up breakfast, and I had been wearing the same pair of sweatpants for about 3 days, and then I put those same sweatpants on when we got back.
Good.
Right on.
Two, what version of David Harbour does everyone picture when they need to picture David Harbour to calm down?
As of Monday, I now picture David Harbour from shitty Seth Rogen movie, The Green Hornet, in which David Harbour is in.
Is he in The Green Hornet?
Yep, I didn't know until Monday, but he is.
Before he was Dave Harbour, he was just another guy.
Now I picture a very young and very schmarmy Dave Harbour from shitty Seth Rogen movie, The Green Hornet.
All right.
My Dave Harbour is probably always going to be probably from Stranger Things to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Like season 1?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I like grizzled stepdad Dave Harbour from the latest season, where he's like trying to keep 11 fed but like still be a reasonable adult.
I was gonna say that's the one I picture is like mustache, like 4-day-old 5 o'clock shadow pastel David Harbour.
Yeah,
his outfit changes constantly in my mind, but his shirt is always smaller than his belly.
Yes,
that's a staple.
The protruding beer gut is important.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now that we've gotten that very self-servicing bit out of the way, I also needed to talk about David Harbour today. We're changing up the format a little bit, and Todd and I are co-hosting this episode because the last few weeks have left us with some extra Wikipedia time. And we've used this time to dig a little deeper than what we're probably going to see in the Black Widow movie. Now, with the future of the MCU shrouded in a bit of mystery, we decided to divulge some of this deep knowledge to you, the listener, in the hopes of satiating your insatiable Marvel hunger. If you came here looking for more information about Marvel characters you know and love, don't hold your breath. But if you came here to learn about a superhuman man-bear, then you're in the right place.
Superhuman man-bear? That was my nickname in college.
Sign me up.
He's a man, and a bear, and a pig. He's Man-Bear Pig.
Did any of you watch the Drew Carey Show growing up?
I watched some of the Drew Carey Show.
Sorry, this is gonna be topical.
It's
because
too,
the way that
Matt was too young for it, for sure. I was a little too young for it. Matt was way too young for it.
I think Todd might have been too young for the Drew Carey Show.
I watched the shit out of it.
I watched every episode.
Also, I'm 43 years old.
Did you guys retire in 1998?
The reason why I asked is the way that Kyle said. The way that Kyle said superhuman man bear, it was kind of the same inflection as the episode where Drew Carey says pizza and then his crotch explodes because he suddenly has a boner. And that joke is out there for like 5 people. So
yeah, I love that bit.
No joke. My nickname in high school was Werebear.
Nice.
My friends believing me to turn into a bear under the full moon.
My nickname in high school was Gramps. So to answer your question, Matt, yes.
Andrew has always been this old.
Yes.
Good Lord. Well, comrades, today Todd and I have invited Kyle Napasoshik Harper and Andrew Vasha Zadorvre Henderson to be a captive...
My favorite brands of filtered water.
Damn it. To be a captive audience as we talk at them about the Russian version of the Avengers. There's probably a joke to be made about vodka here.
Are our middle names not 2 brands of vodka?
They aren't. They are Russian drinking terms, specifically about vodka.
So I wasn't far off.
No, the joke about vodka was in us the whole time.
We would have also accepted Bond villains.
I need to first apologize for not knowing any Cyrillic, but I only have one friend who speaks fluent Russian, and I don't think she listens to this podcast. But Kyle, yours means for a walking stick, and Andrew, yours means for your health. I don't know why for your health is so much longer than for your walking stick. I don't have that much information about the Russian language.
Good.
Interesting.
Before we jump in, Andrew and Kyle, since Todd and I have done a ton of research about the Winter Guard, do you want to give us the rundown on how much you know about the Winter Guard before we get started?
Yeah, I'll start. Matt.
Andrew.
What is the Winter Guard?
Noted. Thank you. Kyle.
I have a bit more information in that it's the Russian Avengers. It's not the British Avengers, and it's not some other country's Avengers, but the Russian Avengers.
Got it. Okay. Well, that, I think, is a great segue into the first part of this podcast, which I have titled, What is the Winter Guard?
Perfect.
Please, star wipe on the slide.
Oh, Canada. Canada's the other country with their own Avengers. It's Canada, Britain, and Russia.
Is that the A-Force?
Alpha Flight. Alpha Flight.
Yeah. A-Force is the all-women Avengers.
Yeah, I do not know what Team Britain is. I assume it's just Team Britain.
British Avengers.
It's
the Pip Pip Cheerios.
Well, so Britain has SWORD, which is like their counterpart to SHIELD, and then
Kyle, Avengers, not Pokemon.
Stop. I have restarted Pokemon Sword, but that's not what I'm talking about. SWORD is like the interdimensional version of SHIELD, but also just here on Earth, and is in Britain. That's all I got.
We're not talking about swords or Britain today. We are talking about the Winter Guards. So without further ado, the Winter Guard is described by She-Hulk in Volume 2, number 34, Russia's Answer for the Avengers.
So you were right, Andrew.
Yeah.
Kyle, whomever.
That wasn't me.
That was me.
Sorry, no credit to Andrew. Kyle, you did a good job.
The Winter Guard is the current super team working under the Russian government, but they are not the first team to work under the Russian government. And that is important to know because Marvel Comics have been around since like 40s and 50s, which means that Marvel Comics were printed during the time of the USSR and post the fall of the USSR. So in Marvel canon, there are super teams that worked under the Soviet Union and then super teams that came to be after the Soviet Union fell. So the Winter Guard is the current Russian super team, but they are not the first. There are 4 other Russian super teams to be aware of, or that are worth being aware of. The first, and the one that gets talked about the most, is the Soviet Super Soldiers. They worked for the USSR and the allies of the Warsaw Pact. So the Soviet Super Soldiers include the founder and leader of the group, whose name is Professor Phobos. He's
Okay.
yeah. The names aren't great. He's sort of a cross between like a Professor X and kind of like a Bane type.
He really likes to not be a part of things.
I don't get it.
You're out there on your own. No one's here to help you.
It's like FOMO. FOMO.
No, I think I got what you were getting at, but no.
Is that what you were going for? That did not land.
Nope. Went over my head.
Got it.
I'll edit some claps in there for you.
Some crickets.
Anyway, so you've got your founder, Professor Phobos. His thing is that he siphons the powers away from mutants to power his own power. But it's not super specific about how, why, or what his power is. Just that he siphons powers from mutants and usually kills them. The next one you have is Mikhail Ursus, also known as Ursa Major. We'll talk about him a lot later. He's sort of the Hulk of the group. Then you have Lanya Petrovna and Nikolai Krylenko. They are a brother-sister team. Lanya Petrovna is known as Dark Star. She is a Thor / Scarlet Witch type character. And Nikolai Krylenko, the brother, is known as Vanguard, and he's your Captain America type of this group. And then the last member of the Soviet Super Soldiers, the main core group, because all of these groups have rotating cast members, is Dmitry Bukharin, who is the 5th Crimson Dynamo. Because one thing that we will probably talk about a little bit is that every time somebody dies from one of these teams, they just get replaced by somebody new, but they go by the same name.
It's so true.
So there have been like 4 Crimson Dynamos and like 6 Red Guardians and a couple of Dark Stars and a few Vanguards.
Well, I mean, to be fair, as we've said a lot of times in this show, there are multiples of every hero, though.
There are multiples of every hero. I think, though, that's probably a little more like Marvel taking commentary at communism, because like that whole idea of like no identity, you're for the state, so you're just the new Crimson Dynamo now. We don't care about the old one anymore.
And I would say, like, yes, Andrew is right that like Marvel does this quite a bit, but in the short bit of like diving into the research that I think Matt and I have done, this is extra guilty of it. Like,
Gotcha.
like
So it's
way
just, like,
more
different
guilty.
scale.
Yeah.
So you brought up communism, so I think it's a good point to look at this in the context of history, right? Because, you know, the bad guys in all of these stories are either Germans or Russians, right?
Yep.
So help me like, these are clearly like superheroes. So were these like older? These were superheroes they were making in the 70s or 80s, or is this like much newer? Is this post fall of Soviet Union?
Right. So go ahead, Todd. I'll field you.
Well, I was going to say, a lot of mine have origins in, like, the 60s. So, I mean, I'm trying to see where we got here. Yeah, I mean, a lot of mine are, like, 50s, 60s, so they kind of, like, hit their stride later, which, I mean, we'll talk a bit more about a couple individuals, but I think a lot of them are going to have very similar storylines of created as a bad guy.
Okay.
And then as history went on, they became more of a good guy.
So based on my knowledge of these trends too, like 60s through 80s, Russians were the bad guys in pop culture. And then like 90s, we stopped having Russian bad guys and just having nondescript and or Arabian.
Well, Rocky IV finished the Cold War.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
And then after everything, all media post Rocky IV, Russians could be good guys again.
Well, and then we did this fun thing in like the late 2008s where it was like, well, we can't use like Middle Eastern bad guys because that's racist. So let's go back to Russians because we're not mad at Russia anymore. So now it's cheeky and fun. Yeah. And like that's when the big like Winter Soldier like comics started coming back out and like Bucky's rebirth all happened in that fun time of like, we can use Russians as bad guys because it's not racist, even though it still kind of is.
Right, because that's the number one rule of Hollywood is that you can't be racist against white people, even if they have accents. So it doesn't matter what the accent is. If they're white, you can't be racist towards them.
Might I remind you, a few minutes ago, I believe we said that the British Avengers is the Pip Pip Cheerios, Matt. So I think we've just kind of proven our own point here today.
So anyway, that's the Soviet super soldiers. And they, again, like worked specifically for the Soviet Union. So they were typically seen as villains in other media. But... and we'll get to this a little bit later, 3 people from the Soviet super soldiers, Ursa Major and Darkstar and Vanguard, at one point did a mission and then said, we're never working for the state again. We'll work on state teams, but we will not work explicitly for the state or the government again. And that comes back a little bit later on. So that's the Soviet super soldiers. The next group to be aware of is called Siberforce. And they just kind of pop in and out. You don't hear a ton from them.
Rudy Giuliani's in charge of that, right?
Nice.
Damn it. All right. So the thing to know about the USSR in Marvel canon is that they viewed mutants as dangerous, and so they killed mutants as babies and children as soon as their powers developed. Like, as soon as any inclination of them being mutants came out, the USSR put them down. The first mutants in the USSR to officially be kept alive were the ones that became part of the Soviet super soldiers, but they were not the only mutants to survive childhood in Russia. The rest of those mutants, maybe not the rest, but most of those mutants became the Siberforce, which is an underground mutant crime-fighting force in communist Russia.
So the Russian X-Men.
Yes, the Russian,
but also not.
Right.
When I'm trying not to look at my notes, because when I start looking at the notes that we have, I start reading ahead. But I just did glance over, and when I was listening to you say Siberforce, in my head it was just CYBER space force.
Yes,
which is like,
but it is not.
That's stupid. No, it's Siberforce, like SIBER, like Siberia.
Yeah.
That's
clever.
That's
like
really
that.
stupid. That's really, really stupid.
Well, whether you call it stupid or clever, it exists. And the Siberforce starts under the USSR, but they continue as a super mutant team post the fall of the USSR. So they start as more of like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like we're crime fighters, but we can't ever be seen. And then they become more of the X-Men post fall of the USSR, where like they are detested by a lot of humanity, but they also don't necessarily need to hide underground.
Gotcha.
Yeah. The other thing to note about the Siberforce is that when Ursa Major, Darkstar, and Vanguard split away from the Soviet super soldiers and say, we're not working for the state anymore, Siberforce gives those 3 sanctuary and says, you can come like be part of our group. We'll help protect you from the Soviet government. Then they like bail out again. It's a little blurb that you see a whole bunch. It doesn't mean much. The next group is called the Supreme Soviets. They exist. All I know is that they exist. I have yet to find much information about the Supreme Soviets other than that they exist. The Supreme Soviets are the Soviet super soldiers after the mutants left before the fall of the USSR. So like Soviet super soldiers were the Avengers first, and then the Supreme Soviets were the Soviet Union tightening down and saying, this is our core. They are brainwashed for our communist state, and they work only for us.
Oh, I gotcha.
Man, I hope you guys were in incognito mode when you were searching for all this stuff.
Well, we're on lists.
Yeah.
You click too many links off the Wikipedia, and you end up Google translating your page.
Yeah, it only happened twice today. The last group to know are the People's Protectorate. People's Protectorate are formed from the Soviet super soldiers after the fall of the USSR. So the Soviet super soldiers split up and become Siberforce and the Supreme Soviets. At some point, the guys from Siberforce sort of reconvene as the Soviet super soldiers, but without the state control. The Supreme Soviets keep the state control, and then the People's Protectorate are the new Soviet super soldiers, not under state control, after the fall of the USSR. That is the most confusing thing I'm going to say today, so stop me if it didn't make sense.
I think it's good. I think, like you said, this is like the foundation is the most confusing thing because it shows that, again, a lot of these heroes started as villains, and then shit has happened,
and then a state fell, and they had to restructure. So it all tracks. Yeah.
In the weirdness of I guess this is kind of funny. In the weird obscurity that is comic books, talking about super powered beings. We're getting caught in the weeds of like, well, here's the government agency that actually ran that, and here's what was pulling the strings behind them.
It's just what happens when an organization, when a country is subject to freedom and democracy. All of the bad people turn good because of freedom.
Exactly.
Didn't like the way that tasted. Yeah, so the other thing, I guess, that makes this more complicated is that the Winter Guard itself doesn't have a really plot out storyline until about 1998, 2000. So all of these groups are groups that you see in the first half of a book of Captain America or the first half of a book of Iron Man, and they just kind of like pop in and out, which is why it's kind of hard to map the trail through all of this.
It was a name they gave to like a collection of mini bosses for Captain America to beat up on his way to the main boss. Like, yeah, it's not anything. It wasn't anything until they needed to pull a name from history to name their new Russian team.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, with all of that said, and I'm sorry, let me go through. I've got the members of the People's Protectorate when it is formed. People's Protectorate includes Red Guardian. Red Guardian is the character that David Harbour is playing. I did not get specific as to which Red Guardian this is, and I apologize.
It's best
for
that you didn't, because I will.
Yep.
The answer may surprise you.
Of course. Vostok, who is a Soviet-era synthezoid. That's a quote from the comics. He is basically like a Russian alien Vision.
What the fuck is a synthezoid?
It is
Russian Vision.
Yeah, it's Russian Vision. Perun, who is Thor but Slavic. Fantasia, Perun. Yeah.
Okay.
Fantasia, a dire wraith alien with amnesia who is also an illusion magician and is absolutely an eldritch horror.
Yeah, it's important to know dire wraiths are like a reoccurring thing with a lot of these characters that they are and this is stupid, but like dire wraiths, I believe it's an alien species that like shows up and can take over their bodies. It's important to one of the characters I talk about later.
Yeah, they're like eldritch horror yerks. To tie it back to something we just talked about. Yeah. And then the last member of the People's Protectorate is Airstrike, which is just a new alternative name for Crimson Dynamo. Is Crimson Dynamo from Soviet super soldiers. They just call him Airstrike now.
I'm going to put my bummer hat on one more time and just point out it's interesting that half of the foreign Avengers are literal aliens too. That's just something to note. Yeah. So, with the foundation laid out, let's move on to the Winter Guard. And the equation that you need to calculate how we get here is that Winter Guard equals People's Protectorate plus Siberforce. So you take the People's Protectorate, you toss some mutants in there, and you get the Winter Guard. And that is the Winter Guard that we're going to be talking about for the rest of the day.
I have a question.
Yes.
So do these superheroes fight supervillains that are also Soviet themed?
Yes. Asterix. No. So yes, they do. Like one of the first major fights of, I think, the People's Protectorate, maybe the Winter Guard, is actually to go back and take down Lord Phobos. who has hauled up in a nuclear fallout zone in northern Russia and is trying to spread nuclear fallout across all of Russia. So they do fight Soviet villains. They also fight other like world-ending villains. And then they get in a huge fight with Namor, which we'll talk about later.
Okay.
Yeah, because again, Namor is a dick, and that's why they get in a fight with him. Basically,
he's angry that his last name is Mackenzie.
Wouldn't you be?
You can stop me if I'm getting ahead. Is Ivan Vanko involved in any of these teams ever?
Yes, I'll be talking about Ivan Vanko.
Okay, good,
nice.
All right, so after the fall of the USSR, the new Russian government decided they needed a team. That team was the Winter Guard, and that team consists of Red Guardian, also named Steel Guardian, Dark Star, Vanguard, Cybercat, not important, Vostok, Fantasia, Power Surge, also not important.
Cybercat spelled like Siberia, not a digital cat.
Yes. Yeah, Power Surge spelled like the 90s drink. Yes, Todd.
Something that's funny that neither of us end up talking about Vostok later, but I did a little bit of research, and apparently Vostok is also referred to as Sputnik, which is just too on the nose.
Yeah, right?
Who phoned that one in?
Right. Yeah. So the Winter Guard in this formation made their first appearance in Iron Man number 9 in October of 1998. Now, they have made appearances all over the place, but the Winter Guard itself has never had a full comic book run like the Avengers or like the X-Men. There has been a series that was called Hulk Winter Guard, and then there was also a 3-issue limited run called Dark Star in the Winter Guard that ran in 2010. But there's never been a full Winter Guard comic, unless I'm wrong, and somebody can tell me in the comments.
I don't think. I mean, I did not see anything labeled Winter Guard. So I don't think so.
Yeah. And again, like I said earlier, the team changes pretty regularly, but anytime someone dies, they just get replaced by someone else under the same name. So the current team consists of Ursa Major, Crimson Dynamo number 5, Dark Star, who is Lanya Petronov, who died, but then got resurrected after the second Dark Star died. So it's Lanya Petronov, technically the third Dark Star. Red Guardian, which is the mantle currently being taken up by Vanguard, who also died once and was resurrected. Vostok.
See what I mean? It's a little obscene.
Yeah.
So they're mass produced, which is a very like anti-communist thing.
Yeah. Vostok, who is that Russian Vision, and then 2 interesting ones, Chernobog and Perun, 2 actual Slavic deities, both in Marvel canon and out of Marvel canon, and Red Widow, who is very mysterious, and I didn't bother looking up information about because all it said was Red Widow is very mysterious, and we don't know much information about them.
Yeah, I did pull up some stuff if I can find it. I think the short of it was like Red Widow was one of the last like beings made out of the Red Room, which is where like the assassins are trained, and is like Matt said, extra mysterious and extra deadly, in that even though she is not the leader of the team, like she is like pulling the strings, like calling the shots, because she is that like focused and into it.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
All I read about Red Widow made me think of I'm going to reference the Suicide Squad movie, so I'm sorry in advance, but if you think of Katana from the Suicide Squad movie, who was like just an assassin that walked around with the team but didn't really do anything with the team, that is what I have learned that Red Widow is. Like, rides the bus with the Winter Guard, kills of her own accord.
Red Widow is a dumb name.
It is a dumb name.
Just phoned in.
So
yeah,
is Chernobog and Perun, their deities like Thor is a deity, right? Like they're on the same power level. They would be on the similar power level of Thor?
Similar, yes. Deities like Thor, but of sort of a different manifestation.
Well, sure, they're different religions, so to speak. So
yeah, so different religions, but also like they are on Earth in a different way than Thor is on Earth. And I talk about that later, so I don't want to spoil it for now. But the answer to your question is coming. What you need to know is, yes, they are very similar to Thor. They are gods like Thor, and the Asgardians are gods. They have been around as long as the Asgardians, so on and so forth.
But they're different in nature than the Asgardians.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Cool. Gotcha.
And that concludes section 1 of this podcast that I have titled "What is the Winter Guard?" Does anyone have any questions before I
have
pitch
one.
to Todd? Andrew, go ahead.
So, what is the Winter Guard then?
Yes.
As it stands in the comics today, what is the Winter Guard?
As it stands in the comics today, the Winter Guard is a Russian super team that sometimes works for the state but isn't state controlled and consists of those people that I listed earlier.
Got it.
Okay.
Yep. Cool. They are the Soviet power of friendship. That is not an inaccurate way to describe the Winter Guard.
All right.
Well, so since Matt kicked off what is the Winter Guard, the next thing that we're going to do is just run you through some of the characters that make up the Winter Guard. And we couldn't have this discussion without talking about David Harbour, because David Harbour is everything. Now, so his character is the Red Guardian. As Matt had said, there's been like 7 different Red Guardians. The original Red Guardian was named Alexei Lebedev. And so he first appeared fighting alongside, he appeared in a Namor comic, fighting alongside Namor and Captain America. And so he did his thing, and then he was just kind of killed off in the 50s. That's just a thing that happened. And then they brought in the second Red Guardian, Alexei Shostakov, which is the character that David Harbour will be playing in Black Widow.
So literally fought alongside Captain America. Like, was this in the 40s? Like when Russia was still our allies, and then as soon as they became our enemies, we killed off this Red Guardian.
So his comic book appearance was like dated in 91.
Oh,
but,
okay.
But like
he wouldn't be the red stuff is all Soviet stuff, so he wouldn't be named. He wouldn't have been named Red Guardian in the 40s.
Well, I mean, the Soviet Union came to be in the 40s. We fought alongside the Soviet Union in World War II.
Sure, but was the red stuff? We're getting off track.
Yeah, since this was a story, since these were stories that were set back then, yes,
I understand.
He was the Soviet counterpart to Captain America. Like,
but that was what it was. It didn't literally happen in
no,
that
it did not happen in
this
the 40s.
Was all written in 91.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've got that. So we go to the second. That was the first Alexei. Now we have the second Alexei Shostakov, who the second Red Guardian. This is who David Harbour will be playing. Now, in the comics, he is Natasha Romanoff's husband, which is likely not the case in the MCU. And I mean, I'll kind of jump back and forth between what we know about his character in the MCU and what we know about the comics. So in the MCU, in some of the commercials we've seen, David Harbour refers to them all as family. And I think this is a platonic family, not like a bloodline family. I think it is a shared experience family. Further, I think that is verified because in Endgame, they actually say Natasha Romanoff's father as Ivan, I believe is what they say.
Yeah. Daughter of Ivan.
Yep. And she's like, I didn't know who my dad was. So yeah, probably not her husband, definitely not her dad. But in the comics, it was her husband. And so he was a test pilot, and they were both agents for the KGB. You're going to hear a lot about the KGB today. The KGB is just like pulling all the strings behind everything.
As the KGB typically does.
As the KGB typically does. So anyway, he's one of the most acclaimed pilots, and so he was really active in World War II, and then he has his his death is faked by the KGB, and then they like capture him and train him and do all this shit. And so what ultimately happens to his character in the comics is that he is trained as the Red Guardian, and the big ultimate moment is that he faces off with an ally against Captain America and Black Widow, who Black Widow thinks that her husband is dead, and then he reveals who he is, and like, everyone's brain explodes.
Yeah.
And then he is double crossed by the guy he was like teamed up with, and his death is that he is buried in lava when a volcano erupts.
Of course it was.
But
Whoa.
yeah, I think what's important to note about him and a lot of the other Red Guardians is none of them have special powers. They were all trained and very skilled in, for this Alexei, he's a famous pilot. He was trained in hand-to-hand combat with the KGB, but he doesn't have powers. Many of them use weapons, namely a shield that is very picturesque, a mirror image of Captain America, but none of them have powers. At least most of them don't.
Not even in like the super serum sense.
So, and that is kind of a next note because it is pretty strongly alluded that in Black Widow, the movie, that this Alexei will have been part of the super serum program.
The like Winter Soldier program or whatever.
Yeah,
it was
that all.
Sorry, excuse me. It's cyber serum.
Get out of here. I think this is one of those things where it is a deviation from the comic books, but it makes sense that if in World War II America was successful creating a Captain America,
sure,
that it would only make sense that the Russians would be like, we also can do this. Here we go. And instead of getting like a prim and proper Chris Evans, they get like a kind of sloppy, punchy David Harbour. So
that's a big thing out of the Ultimate Comics, which the MCU is loosely based on, in that like Captain America's creation sparked this whole like our like space race. It was
arms race.
It launched a super soldier race, which like Spider-Man, the Hulk, and I think all mutants all are like birthed in the Ultimate Comics out of the like super soldier race.
Yeah, and I think that'll be, I mean, it makes sense that would be like the through line here. Like I really can't imagine them not doing that. Like, I mean, David Harbour's, I'm sure his character Red Guardian is a very skilled combatant, but like give him some super dad strength. Just give it to him.
The big thing it does is it cleans up a lot of messy continuity and makes it much more digestible.
Well, and we were talking about this before, but I've been telling these guys I'm coming pretty hard off of a Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. binge, and that is, I mean, for people out there who haven't watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., that is the through line through the whole show is the U.S. made a Captain America, we want one too, and everybody wants one. So in the context of the MCU, I mean, Captain America is the patient zero, or is the what do you call it? The Big Bang, so to speak, the metaphorical Big Bang that sets off.
Yeah.
It just sets all this shit off.
Yeah.
Well, and if you think about it, in the Marvel universe, he was, I believe, the very first part of the Weapon series, which then leads ultimately to Wolverine being Weapon X.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the whole thing.
And that's all out of the Ultimate Comics, where like Weapon X is an attempt to recreate the super soldier serum. Like technically Tony Stark was trying to make his own version of super soldiers with the Iron Man suit and that continuity. So it all, like I said, Captain America is the genesis point. But
this is a digression, but I need to know, I was thinking about this earlier. Why haven't they in 6 years been able to recreate that? Like do they ever really get into that?
I know that if you think about it, I believe it happened before. Shoot, I can't remember because I watched Captain America so long ago, but I can't remember if the Red Skull tried it before or after him. But that was why the Red Skull, at least in the cinematic universe, got all mutated and weird, is because he tried to use it. And I mean, then the scientist was killed in the movie. So
yeah.
And then Bruce Banner was another version of trying that serum. So I think it's just not been like dialed in.
Yeah, I think there is definitely also some like hand wavy bullshit that it's successful largely because it is Steve Rogers. Like there was something special about Steve Rogers that worked with the super soldier serum, which is why it's been so much more successful for Captain America than it has been for everybody else, because you had to be some squirrely, weird, patriotic nerd to get big.
Yep.
Basically.
It amplifies characteristics of your personality, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
The thing to take away, so again, Red Guardian is effectively the Russian Captain America. That is just the easiest way to describe it. As Matt had said, the current iteration is Vanguard, who is the brother of Darkstar, who had died and then came back. Again, that is a thing we say a lot. And something else I'll throw in is obviously this person has the direct connection to the MCU. I would love to see more David Harbour when Black Widow is done. I don't have high hopes that he survives the movie, but after we get done talking, or after I guess I got done researching and we get done talking here today, man, what I would give for like a 4 or 6 episode run of just like the happenings of the Winter Guard on Disney Plus.
Oh yeah.
well, Todd, have we seen any volcano footage revealed from Black Widow?
Not yet.
Well, then he survives. Like,
and the reason why I say that is like we'll talk about these characters and how they connect if they do. But the reality is they're probably not going to do a Winter Guard going forward. But it would be cool to do like an Adventures of the Winter Guard from like 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Like that would be excellent.
That'd be rad.
I mean, it's a big thing in the Marvel comics to just like one and done everything. Yeah. But I agree. It would be fun to have all the alternate countries Avengers popping up going forward.
But that is the Red Guardian. You guys have quick thoughts, or I'm going to toss it over to Matt because I can tell Matt's bursting at the seams for this next one.
Ooh, baby, I'm itching.
I'm good.
Now let's do it.
Yeah, let's not hold Matt back anymore.
All right, sweet. So the next person I want to talk about, I guess I should say, I talked about the Winter Guard. Todd talked about Red Guardian. The rest of this is Todd and I bouncing back and forth on a couple of members of the Winter Guard who we may not see in the MCU. It's just some flavor. So let me introduce you to one of my all-time favorite Marvel characters, Ursa Major. Ursa Major.
Google it right now.
Yeah, Google it right now. Make sure you put Marvel at the end or you will get a picture of a constellation. Ursa Major, human name, Mikhail Ursus. Mikhail Ursus.
Is he just a bear man?
He's a bear man.
Is he a man bear pig?
I've never seen a bear with abs before this.
I love him.
Is he half man, half bear, half pig?
He's largely just bear.
No, he's just bear. He's like the bear. He's like Kuma from Tekken.
He is.
I love him.
Oh, has anyone seen the D&D meme of Sir Barrington, the bear with like super high charisma?
Yes.
Okay, with all of that said, it's time to move into my favorite man bear, Ursa Major, and we will get to that right after we all take a quick pee break.
My favorite man bear is my favorite 50s era sitcom.
Yeah. How many? I mean, do you have like a second favorite man bear? This listicle is top 5 man bears. Number 3 may surprise you.
Oh, God. Okay.
And I think we found a title for the episode.
All right, and welcome back to our discussion of the Winter Guard. For you, it has been 60 seconds. For us, approximately 4 days. I'm going to talk about Ursa Major, and I haven't read these notes in a little while, so I'm sorry in advance if I screw something up.
4 days in which Todd grew 2 weeks worth of beard.
In quarantine, nothing matters.
All right, so let's jump in with Ursa Major. Again, my favorite man bear. Ursa Major, real human name, Mikhail Ursus. He was one of the first Soviet mutants not killed when his mutation manifested. And that isn't necessarily because his mutation manifested and the Soviet Union was like, oh, look, a bear, we should keep this one. It was because his mutation manifested and his parents were like, you get the fuck out of here, and sent him to go live in the woods with some animals for a little while.
Reasonable.
Yep. Ursa Major, the man bear, raised by animals in the mountains for a little while. But when he was discovered by the Soviet Union, they determined that he would be one of the first mutants to be used in their Soviet super soldier program. And he was sent to be trained by Professor Phobos to use his mutation for the state. Professor Phobos is that guy we talked about who sucks the powers out of the mutants that he's training. He's like an evil Professor X, kind of, but more like with Bane powers. It's a little weird.
When you say he sucks their powers out, is this like a Kevin Bacon in First Class?
That's what I was
type
kind
of power,
thinking.
Or is it a rogue type power?
Right. So like, I don't totally know.
Somewhere in between. Okay.
I think it's kind of somewhere in between. I didn't find a lot of details about how exactly he sucks their power out, just that he does, and not a lot of mutants survive his training because he drains them of their power.
Gotcha.
And Professor Phobos has kind of like cartoon Bane, not so much Dark Knight Bane, but cartoon Bane, who has the tubes that go around him and into him.
Oh, sure.
Professor Phobos gets pumped with mutant power juice into his person.
Of course.
That gives him powers or whatever.
Mutant power juice, yes.
Yeah. And like
my favorite energy drink.
new product from the Power Thirst line. When Darkstar and Vanguard leave Professor Phobos's like compound, he gives them a shield and a sickle and like a gem or something that are supposed to be things that help them use their powers, but they actually secretly siphon their powers and transfer them to Professor Phobos. I don't know. It's very, very hand wavy. He just does.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
I'm really glad they didn't break their backs over this one.
Well, so I went looking real quick. So Kevin Bacon's character, Sebastian Shaw,
it's supposed to be Sebastian Shaw.
He's like the Nazi version of this. So again, much like there is Russian Avengers and like Canadian Avengers and everything else, they must just have a different token bad guy whose job it is to
suck powers,
heroes' powers. Yeah.
Right. So we talked a little bit about how the Soviet super soldiers and stuff, they like broke up a couple of times and different people joined the group. So there was one moment that Ursa Major, Darkstar, and Vanguard, who were 3 mutants trained by Professor Phobos, decided they weren't going to work for the state anymore. So they dipped out and they joined up with Siberforce, which is the underground Soviet mutant team.
Led by Rudy Giuliani.
So he was with Siberforce for a while, but he rejoined the Winter Guard post-fall of the USSR. So when the Soviet Union became Russia, he joined up with the Winter Guard, still vowing to not work for the state, but he kind of does work for the state sometimes, but he'll tell you that he doesn't work for the state.
In the way that like when after Civil War, Captain America wasn't working for S.H.I.E.L.D. anymore, but still was at all of these S.H.I.E.L.D. hot sites doing weird S.H.I.E.L.D. extraction things. Like,
yeah, and like how the KGB doesn't exist anymore, even though the KGB totally exists.
Well, gonna have to edit that out. Can't say that on the internet. He rejoins the Winter Guard. Thing to note about Ursa Major that's not really totally important. He didn't lose his power after the M-Day decimation storyline. So when all of the other mutants had their powers taken away, he was one of the 10% or whatever arbitrary number was that maintained their mutant power. So he just kind of like hung out as a bear for a while.
Don't we all?
Yeah. He has a bunch of storylines. Ursa Major just kind of pops up. I think that we said at one point, he's sort of the token character to show you this conflict is in Russia because Ursa Major is there. So some of the hot hits that he is a part of, he investigated the death of the Abomination when Abomination was killed by Red Hulk in Russia. He repulsed the Lady Liberators. He fought with War Machine against a Skrull invasion of Russia. He faced down the Remont Six, and he mentored the second Dark Star. There was Dark Star, and then Dark Star died, and a new Dark Star became Dark Star.
There's more. There's always, it's a Russian doll situation. It's just Dark Stars all the way down.
Literally, because we're in Russia. Yes.
Yep. So Ursa Major was the mentor of Dark Star number 2. And yeah, that's kind of his storyline.
He's Russia's Wolverine. Whenever a story takes place in Canada, they show you it takes place in Canada by having Wolverine being out in the wilderness somewhere.
He is absolutely Russia's Wolverine. Not only is he Russia's Wolverine, but Mikhail Ursus is like Russia's Logan. Like he fits both halves of that character very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so everything's fine in the life of Ursa Major until one day he just gets put in jail. The reason he got put in jail is because reasons. Like
because he turns into a giant bear that crushes things.
He was accused of some sorts of treason. It's not clear.
Bearing arms.
Get out, Todd.
He was guilty of being a mutant in Russia. Like
interesting that a man that turns into a bear would be imprisoned for white collar crimes.
The Russians just decided it's time for you to be in jail. So they arrested him, and he spent a couple of years in a Russian gulag. In that Russian gulag, he had a fight with Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier.
Of course.
That's cool.
Yeah, right? And they beat each other up in prison for a while. Then, after he'd been in prison for a bit, he was pulled out of the Russian gulag, and he was recommissioned to the Red Room to save the memories of the Black Widow clone. Or at least he did save the memories of the Black Widow clone. That wasn't exactly what his purpose was. And this is comic storyline. So in the comic storyline, Natasha Romanoff, the Black Widow, dies. And in the Red Room, they decide to recreate a clone Black Widow, but not tell that clone that it's a clone. Just let it assume that it is still Natasha Romanoff.
That's what you do when you have a clone.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Natalia Romanova, as she is. No, and that's real. I'm looking this up right now.
Yeah. And so Ursa Major did not approve of the fact that they were just going to like whitewash this second Black Widow. And so he preserved the memories of the first Black Widow, implanted them in the clone, and also explained to the clone that she is a clone and not the original Black Widow. I'm not super sure why.
If you're curious as to who killed the original Black Widow, it was an evil duplicate of Captain America. So I bet that probably may not have been your first guess, but would have made top 10.
So after that, he is rearrested in Siberia and then becomes the world's drunkest bear. Apparently, after he is rearrested, he just spends all of his time drinking.
The best alias to acquire ever.
I stole that alias directly out of a page from Avengers Volume 8, where they have like all of the Winter Guard around, and they're all described with different little nicknames. And his is World's Drunkest Bear.
Once again, solidifying him as Russia's Wolverine.
Yeah, 100%. So after he is rearrested, he is brought back out of prison to rejoin the Winter Guard to fight against the Defenders of the Deep. And this is like, I think, the most recent major story plot that the Winter Guard has had. The Defenders of the Deep is a fighting force put together by Namor to quell human activity in the oceans. And they attacked like a Russian battleship, which irritated the Russians, and so they sent the Winter Guard, I believe, along with the Avengers, to fight the Defenders of the Deep and earn back man's right to the ocean or whatever. But I don't know. Ursa Major was there.
I'm thinking about it, and I feel like Namor is like the Kevin Bacon of superheroes, whereas like he's always connected. He's never like the starring role. Like he's never featured, but he's always there.
Yep.
Like, do you think there's one superhero we've talked about more than Namor on this stupid podcast?
Namor's always, I think you're right, though. He's always on the periphery of whatever we're talking about, unless we're talking about his 13th year.
and then he is the protag. But he's always like just there. It's so weird.
It's because he doesn't have anything else to do.
Yeah.
I guess.
Because they want to include him because he's popular, but stories about going underwater get really boring after you tell them the fourth time. So
I guess you can only do so much in the bottom of the ocean. Anyway.
Well, and Namor is like kind of a douchebag edgelord anyway. Yeah. And I feel like there's somebody at Marvel who has watched Aquaman be made fun of for like 60 years. And they're like, maybe if we just don't talk about our Aquaman so much, no one will dump on him for how nerdy of an idea talks to fish is.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you remember the Secret Wars sidebar, like that was the thing. Namor was with the bad guys for a while. Was like, nah, like we're gonna do what we have to do, and sucks to suck everyone else.
Well, and having the smarmy like douchebag character turn and help the good guys in the third act is a fun story to tell every time, which is why he keeps showing up.
Yeah,
yay, Namor's here.
So there are your quick hits on Ursa Major. Kyle, you really summed it up well, saying that he is Russia's Wolverine. He plays that role for the Winter Guard as well. Like, when he's there, he's sort of the de facto leader, but when he's not there, he's really not there.
He kind of Forrest Gumps his way through all of Russia's Marvel events.
Yeah, and he he mentors some people, he pisses off other people. Sometimes he punches the bad guy, sometimes he punches his friends. He's the world's drunkest bear. But a question that I have for you guys that I would be remiss for not including in the silly podcast that we do is the ever popular casting question. Who would you like to see portray Ursa Major, actual human man bear, in the upcoming Black Widow movie if he was included in that movie?
My pick is Dolph Lundgren.
That's really good. Like Dolph Lundgren now, or would you age back?
No, Dolph Lundgren now. Oh. No, now.
I mean, so you have to go through like 10 photos of just a bear before you find what human Mikael Ursa looks like.
Yeah,
and he looks exactly like Dolph Lundgren because that was our only reference point in the 80s for what a Russian man looked like.
Who's not even Russian. He's Scandinavian. Or he's Swedish.
No. Yeah. Man.
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing we've said before. Like, you know, you can't be racist against white nationalities. Like, it's, you know, especially me having that kind of descent in me. Like, I feel confident saying that they look the same.
Yeah. And like, yeah, I'll give it to you. Dolph Lundgren looks really good for 62. I googled Dolph Lundgren 2020. He looks great.
I mean, look, if
I get like a political like,
look, if they can do it for Mickey Rourke, they can do it for Dolph.
Do it for Dolph. Kyle,
do it for Dolph. Do it for Dolph.
Kyle, who is your pick?
All right, so I'm gonna go a little on the outskirts here. It is my pick to play Ursa Major is comedian Bert Kreischer.
I know that name.
That's really good, Kyle. Kyle, that's so good.
Really good.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It's definitely in the same vein as like David Harbour is washed up Russian Captain America. This is washed up Russian bear fighter.
Well, I really took World's Drunkest Bear and ran with it. Because his top image searches all solidify that title for this man.
Wow.
Yeah, that's my pick. Comedian Bert Kreischer.
That's really good. Todd, do you have a pick?
Man, and this isn't the right answer, and I get that. Your answers are way better. In my head, I just couldn't stop imagining Kevin James turning into a bear and trying to fight something. and it's been there for a while, and like nothing else will come out. So it's Kevin James. Sorry.
Kevin James, Russian cop.
I don't know if Kevin James can do a Russian accent. I hope it's bad.
We'll watch 2.5 hours of him trying to, though.
Yeah.
So for the longest time, my pick for Ursa Major has been, and I'm gonna fuck this name up, Hafbjörn Bjornsson. who is the guy who played the Mountain in Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was my long-time pick for Ursa Major. But I also thought for a really long time, there's no way they're going to put Ursa Major into any MCU movie, and definitely not into this Black Widow movie. Until I was doing research for this and I was talking to Todd about it. Turns out it's pretty much confirmed that he is going to be in this movie, and he has already been cast. So if everybody real quick could look up Oliver Richters, and I've got it in the notes. It's actually spelled like Olivier Richters.
Olivier. It's probably Olivier.
It is probably Olivier. Yeah. So here's some interesting things. First off, Olivier Richters, world's tallest bodybuilder. That man is 7'2". That man is 7'2" without shoes on. His God-given height is 7'2".
Fuck, this dude is a brick shit house.
Yeah. To put that into perspective for you, Halfbor Bjornsson, who played the Mountain, is 6'9". So this guy is a full 5 inches taller than the Mountain.
Jesus.
Yeah.
He is absolutely the perfect man to play a man bear.
Right.
He's also the founder and CEO of Muscle Meat.
He absolutely is. I wasn't going to let this podcast happen without talking about Muscle Meat.
Hashtag Muscle Meat.
Listeners, Muscle Meat is your go-to product.
Word of the day.
I don't have this bit planned out.
If Muscle Meat wants to sponsor this podcast, I'll talk about Muscle Meat. But here's the thing about Olivier or Olivier or Oliver Richters.
It's definitely not Oliver Richters. We'll at least
100% not that.
But please continue.
No, in my brain it's Oliver Richters because I want to know a 7'2" man who shares the same name as my cat. But Olivier Richters posted a couple of things about being in the MCU on his Instagram page. And I think at one point, like, use the hashtag Ursa or something like that. It hasn't ever been confirmed who he's actually playing, but if you go on IMDb,
there's no way he is not playing.
Right? Who else could he possibly be? But if you go to his IMDb page, he is in Black Widow, and he's credited as muscular gulag inmate. And if you remember that time I said that Ursa Major spent a while in a Russian gulag, it's probably going to be him. So he is probably going to be in this movie. It's probably going to be played by this guy, and that guy is definitely 7'2". And I just need to reiterate that one more time.
If they only have him in the movie to be, like, wear a name tag that says Ursa and not turn into a giant bear, I'm gonna be really mad now.
I feel like though that's a pretty big stunt cast. Like this, he's like a big deal dude. Like if you're gonna cast somebody like that just for like a one-off, Easter egg, that seems wasteful.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say I'll put it in the category of, granted, like, we already kind of know this is coming, but I can't imagine they don't do some sort of cool reveal, even if they don't talk about what's going on. It's like a wink and a nod of Red Guardian being like, "Oh, I've got to go get a friend," or they're busting Red Guardian out or something, and like suddenly in the background this happens, like him as a dude bouncing people off a wall, but then he turns into a bear. Like I'll give it the same level of, they kept the Red Skull a big secret reveal in Infinity War, and I would think this will be another transformation reveal that we'll know nothing about until we actually see it play out.
Yeah, so I think everybody knows that some things from the Black Widow movie will continue forward and be part of the MCU future. And we also all know that that's not going to be Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff, Scarlett Johansson. And I don't think, I didn't think that Ursa Major was going to be in this movie. And B, I never would have thought that Ursa Major was going to continue through the MCU. But now I'm pretty convinced that not only is Ursa Major going to be in Black Widow, he is going to be the first mutant in the MCU, and he is going to come back in some capacity later on. I don't think he's going to be part of the core lineup that we see in a bunch of movies, but I think that much like Red Skull, he's going to be a pretty big reveal in Black Widow, and he will come back up later on.
This is so off topic. Do Inhumans not count as mutants?
No, that was a specific like route the MCU did because they didn't have the rights.
Oh, because that was their workaround.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are in this canon properties of the Mind Stone. So
yeah, and they could go the way of like everyone has like mutant genes latent in them that become activated. Basically, what the Inhumans talk about anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, even if nothing else, I could still see them doing what we already said comic books do, where like they show a global war taking place and you see a bear throwing people in the back. And like, that's Russia, only in the MCU.
That's 100% how I think they're going to use Ursa Major going forward, as just like Russian setting.
I would also say, I mean, I still have chips on the bet that Red Guardian dies in this, unfortunately. But I would love to see, even if it's like a 6-episode run on Disney Plus of just the adventure of the Winter Guard before Red Guardian got like fat, and show me just a 6-episode run of the Winter Guard doing Winter Guard shit.
I didn't even think of that. Bucky and Ursa Major fight happens in Falcon and Winter Soldier, the show. That's my prediction.
Oh, that would be awesome. What if?
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah. So that's what I've got for Ursa Major. Andrew, did you have something else you wanted to throw in there?
No. Well, I was just gonna say that you could do a really cool like early 90s, late 80s, like follow the Soviet Union era. Time like what do you call it? Like period piece. That'd be pretty rad.
Yeah, right on. But that is all I've got for Ursa Major. Todd, I will toss it back over to you.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about the Crimson Dynamo, who we kind of spoke about a little bit earlier. So earlier, Matt had dropped the name Anton Vanko, which I think either you, Kyle, or you, Andrew, one of you had asked, like, oh, is that tied to Ivan Vanko? Well, yes, it is. So Anton Vanko was the very first Crimson Dynamo, which the Crimson Dynamo, much like a lot of the things we're talking about today, this is the Russian Iron Man.
Yep,
it's Russian Iron Man, everyone. And if you Google it, you'll see his early armors are goofy and bulky like early Iron Man armors, like the whole thing. Now, Anton Vanko had a son named Ivan Vanko, and so that is the name that you recognize from before. Effectively, in Iron Man 2, they kind of mash up the Crimson Dynamo and Whiplash to be like one bad guy.
They name drop Anton Vanko in Iron Man 2 as well. Like he mentions his father.
What they do is Mickey Rourke's character is Ivan Antonovich Vanko.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they basically like, and I don't think they ever actually call him Whiplash.
No, because they avoided using names until later than that. They avoided using names like that for a while.
Yeah.
So I think they kind of did like a character merge, but the reality is like, even then, that like you said, Kyle, they had still said that Ivan's dad's name is Anton, who was a scientist who worked with Howard Stark to create the arc reactor. So like the setting is already there in the MCU. So this character exists or doesn't exist depending on how you wanna frame it. So effectively, the origin of the Crimson Dynamo, we've got a Russian Iron Man who is told to sabotage Stark Industries and defeat Iron Man. Cool. We did
that. We did that already.
Yeah. And his he's got a big red suit. He can control electricity. He fires bolts of lightning. Awesome. He fights Iron Man. Wouldn't you know it? He gets defeated, and then much like a lot of the other heroes we talk about, they become friends. So, that happens. And again, like a lot of these other similar stories, he is then captured by KGB agents, including the Black Widow, because, the Black Widow is everywhere. And he ends
up... The Black Widow is in all of us.
Yeah, the Black Widow was inside us the whole time. But he saves Iron Man by sacrificing himself, because friendship. So there have been over 7 different iterations of the Crimson Dynamo. The most popular one is Dmitry Bukharin. Or Bukharin, I'm not sure how you pronounce it in the end. The 5th Crimson Dynamo, most well-known, longest running. He was given his armor by the 4th Crimson Dynamo, he was given the armor of the 4th Crimson Dynamo from the KGB, because the KGB is, again, just like the through line of everything we talk about. Again, as with every story about the Crimson Dynamo, he becomes an ally of Iron Man, and then he ends up joining the Winter Guard. And I think if we're talking about how this could potentially show up in the MCU, if we did like the 80s, 90s flashback, you could end up getting what was Mickey Rourke's father, like playing the Crimson Dynamo. If we were doing something going forward, you'd probably get one of the further along Crimson Dynamos, possibly Dimitri. But yeah, there's not a ton to him, except, again, he is the Russian Iron Man, and I think that's pretty neat. All of his armors just kind of like follow the trend of how Iron Man's armors evolved, but always are just very Russian.
The Crimson Dynamo is always like not as good and more dangerous than Iron Man's armor. Like that's always the trade-off there. Is like, it's gonna blow up in 5 minutes, but if he kills us before then, like we can't stop him. It's always the case when you do the Russian comparison.
Lower quality but cheaper components and more mass produced. Is that what you're saying, Kyle?
Yep.
Yes.
I think, like since we're talking about if they're going to show up or not, I don't see, unless again we get like a neat flashback or something in Black Widow of the Winter Guard, I don't foresee us getting anything out of this. However, knowing that we've got this like somewhat dangerous, potentially erratic scientist character, if we were to cast them into the MCU, do any of you three have ideas? Because I've brought up Crimson Dynamo before, and back then I said it needed to be Jason Mantzoukas, and I still stand by that. I want Raffi to be Crimson Dynamo.
Why is he Crimson Dynamo? Is that character like, I don't know a lot about this character, so this is like harder to cast, but
I think like, I mean, and I don't know much about Dimitri's character, but when I think of the Russian Tony Stark, I think it has to be someone with erratic features.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
Wild eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An unkempt beard.
Yes.
I get it. Can I just cast Mickey Rourke again?
Just one more time around.
Yeah, our Winter Guard is going to be all like elderly actors.
Yeah, to continue the elderly strain, I've got kind of a weird pull, but I want to tag in Chuck Liddell, former UFC fighter Chuck Liddell.
That's where my mind is going.
That's what I want my Crimson Dynamo to be, especially because after I dug for pictures of Dmitry Bucharin, I finally found one of him taking off the helmet, and he's got this crazy ass mustache. And so I want Chuck Liddell with this monster Orange County handlebar mustache.
I'm going to cast, now this is a little tougher because it's not a real person, but I'm going to cast Soda Popinski from Punch-Out. That's what I'd like to cast.
I love it's going to be kind of hard because he's not a real person. So that's a good start.
They're going to animate this Punch-Out character into every MCU movie now for Andrew.
Right. I mean, whatever. There's a man bear. Who cares?
You're right. Rules don't exist.
Nothing is real.
I looked up famous Russians thinking that would get me some sort of a list. It's not worth your time.
No, it's probably all
the first two are Putin and Rasputin are the first two they give you.
Well, don't spoil Rasputin because I'm going to use him next.
It's funny that you Googled famous Russians because I just Googled Expendables cast.
Oh.
For a second, I couldn't remember where the Expendables cast ended and the Wild Hogs cast began. And so in my head, Tim Allen was coming onto the list.
Oh, man. If they were still making Expendables movies, Tim Allen would absolutely worm his way in there somehow.
And he would do that stupid grunt at some point.
Oh, yeah.
There's no way he would.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that is the Russian Iron Man Crimson Dynamo. I'll go ahead and pass it back to Matt.
Great. Well, now that we have talked about Ursa Major, who is effectively Russian Wolverine, but as far as the Winter Guard and the Avengers go, is the Hulk, and we've talked about Crimson Dynamo and the Russian Iron Man, I thought I would talk about Winter Guard Russian Thor. So let's talk about Perun. Perun, the Russian Thunder God.
What band is that? What genre of band is that, everyone? What did we decide?
Perun, the Russian Thunder God? That's a Viking metal band if I've ever heard it.
It can only be Viking metal. I don't know what other options there are.
Sounds right.
Yeah. So much like Thor is actually part of Norse mythology, Perun is part of Slavic mythology. So in Slavic mythology, Perun is the highest god of the pantheon and is the god of sky, thunder, lightning, storms, rain, law, war, fertility, and oak trees. So he is your Zeus or your Odin figure in Slavic mythology. He is the son of Svarog, the god of sun and sky, and Lada, who is the goddess of beauty and fertility. He is also the father of Dazbog, who is the god of light. And he, Perun, is the great grandson of the first Slavic god, whose name was Rod, and Mother Earth, Erse. So he is the great grandson of the two gods who began all of the gods in Slavic mythology. And that through line is really pretty similar to his heritage in the Marvel canon. A couple of changes here and there as to who goes in what order and who is the god of what, but that Slavic mythology lines up pretty well with the Marvel mythology of Perun. So he is one of the divas, or devas, I think is probably a little bit more accurate. The devas are the name of these Slavic gods, like the Asgardians are these Norse gods, And like there is an Asgard where all of the Asgardians live, that's kind of like a pocket dimension or another plane. The Devas have their own pocket dimension, other plane, where they all hang out as well. So Perun, basically Thor. He carries an axe, a hammer, and or a sickle, depending on the run and where it lines up with the Soviet Union.
Of course.
Yeah. A weird, like, backstory of Perun, the god that kept coming up, was in 893 AD, along the banks of the Neva River, which I believe is somewhere in Russia. Perun, the thunder god, was traveling with Chernobog, like the god, I think he's called the god of the black or something like that. He's sort of like a destructive god in Slavic mythology, sort of a Hades type. I don't think he's the god of death. I think he's the god of destruction, maybe more of an Ares. But Perun and Chernobog were en route to protect the Slavs from Thor and the Asgards. So Thor and the Asgards were attacking the Slavs. The Slavic gods were coming to protect their people from the Asgardian gods. And on the way, along the banks of the river, they were killed by Gore the God Butcher, which is a name that has come up a couple of times.
Todd loves to talk about him some Gore the God Butcher.
The God Butcher.
Yes, he does. Gore the God Butcher, we never see him killing Perun or Chernobog. They just find, it's like Chernobog's head and the blood of Perun is all that they find along the banks of the Neva River. In 990 AD, Russian King Vladimir the Great converted to Christianity. This is in Marvel canon. This does also happen in real life, but I'm talking specifically about Marvel canon. So Russian King Vladimir the Great converts to Christianity. He says, cut down this field of sacred trees that was sacred to Perun and the Slavic gods and devas. After they cut down those trees, I think in real life they pulled down idols and then like drug the idols through the middle of town, or the statues of these gods. I don't know. But in Marvel canon, after they cut down these trees, Svarog, father of Perun, took the rest of the devas and said, if you don't want to respect us or honor our godship, we will ignore your existence completely. And they all noped back to Svarga. Svarga is the Asgard of the devas.
They took their ball and they went home.
Exactly. They said, I'm done playing and good luck. And they dipped. So fast forward to modern times. And by modern times, I mean circa Soviet Union, right? On the banks of the Neva River is this small town, this group of Slavs. It was the group that Perun and Chernobog were en route to protect from the Asgardians in 893 AD. there is this baker. His name is Valery Savloyev. Valery Savloyev becomes the mortal avatar of Perun, the god of lightning.
Oh.
Yeah. So Perun the deity, is stripped of his godhood and is contained within an amulet. I think that happened after the God Butcher thing. To be completely honest with you, I got a little lost in the weeds trying to figure out when he went from being a god to being a bracelet, but I know that it happened.
I'm sure that it was more a long gap in stories between appearances, and they were just like, he's an amulet now, because the story needs him to be.
Right. So, Perun the god is contained within an amulet. That amulet is found by Valery Savloyev, and Valery Savloyev becomes the mortal avatar of Perun. Although he is not necessarily mortal, he is kind of a demigod. But it's sort of a Shazam situation. Like, this guy is both Valery Savloyev the baker, who acts at the will of Perun, but also can become Perun.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the parallel to Thor's hammer, where like if you take this amulet, he is not imbued with the power of Thor anymore.
And that was the original. Like Thor original was like Donald Blake.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like if he was disconnected from his hammer for so long, he became wussy human person Donald Blake.
If he went more than 2 hours as a human, he would be permanently transformed into a human.
He became a shift manager at the local Sunoco Donald Blake.
Yeah. So it's never really stated why Perun / Valery Savloyev begins working for the government, but he was part of the Supreme Soviets, then he became part of the People's Protectorate, then he became part of the Winter Guard. He was recruited to the Winter Guard to take on the Defenders of the Deep, along with Ursa Major and Chernobog. Chernobog, that other god who was killed on the banks of the Neva River, also kind of loses his godhood and becomes a person inside of another mortal coil and is part of the Winter Guard. I didn't do a lot of research on Chernobog, but they go fight Namor and the Atlanteans because they're being assholes, and the story continues. There is also an ultimate version of Perun that is similar but pretty significantly different. He's bald and also kind of a villain, but he does fight Vampiric Nerd Hulk, King of the Vampires.
I'm gonna need you to unpack that one a little bit.
Yeah, Vampiric Nerd Hulk, King of the Vampires. In the Ultimate story, I think it's during the zombie arc. I don't totally know. There are vampires, and Smart Hulk gets bitten by a vampire. Smart Hulk or Nerd Hulk.
Nerd Hulk. Wait,
like Hulk Ruffalo.
I've never searched this before, but the first sentence. So this is Earth 1610. It looks like Nerd Hulk has often been, or Nerd Hulk, as he's been claimed, is a clone created by Tony Stark's older brother Gregory. Shut up, comic books.
Yeah,
go home.
I didn't like this before, and I definitely don't like it now.
So to shed some light, because I remember Perun in the Ultimate Comics. In the Ultimate Comics, they keep the reader in the dark for a while if Thor is a mutant, claiming to be a god, or an actual outcast god, and Perun comes on the scene to be the opposite of Thor, and basically says like, "No, I'm just a mutant. Thor's just a mutant. He's mortal like me. I'm gonna kill him." And then I think gets his shit kicked in or something. But
the best is the way that he's defeated. Again, I skipped ahead to the ending of the article. Hulk's attack ended when Captain America teleported the entire Triskelion with Perun's hammer to Daylight, Iran, where the vampires combusted. And then in the end, Captain America hits him with a hammer blow to the head.
Yeah, good.
Perfect. So that is Perun. In the Ultimate version, like I said, he's bald and kind of a villain. In the regular comic line, the 616 line, looks exactly like Thor. A little bit shorter, a little bit stockier, a little bit more Slavic, but exactly like Thor. So, with that being said, who would you cast as Perun Slavic Thor god.
Can I get a bad answer out of the way?
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'll go. Let me submit to you one Grigory Rasputin, born 21st January 1869 as a peasant, most notably known to have been the reason that the Romanov dynasty was ultimately destroyed, which led to the series of events of World War I and then subsequently the Soviet Union, or the Marxists then turning into the Soviet Union.
So you're going to cast actual dead historical figure Rasputin.
That's correct.
This Marvel MCU movie.
Good.
Yes,
Okay.
but we're gonna make him look like Rasputin from the 1997 cartoon adaptation of Anastasia, where he has a big scraggly black beard and looks like a necromancer.
That isn't what he looked like. I thought that was an accurate depiction of
No,
Rasputin.
it is. There's a pretty rough beard pic in Wikipedia here.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, that's my bad answer. You're welcome.
Okay, well then mine's better than that, but not by much. So I searched actors with long beards and was just like, man, let's see what we get. I can't get past this picture of Jim Carrey I found. And I would not cast Jim Carrey in this role, though I think he might do all right. I did end up, there are a lot of pictures with Pierce Brosnan with really strong bearded features that, like, I could see Pierce Brosnan. I could see him doing it, though I know what Matt's answer is, and it's way better.
Pierce Brosnan is my favorite James Bond, so I'll give you bonus points for that. Kyle, who is your Slavic Thor?
Joe Manganiello is my
Ooh.
Slavic Thor.
That's not bad.
He appeared in a Google search I did of Slavic actors, and apparently he's Slavic. So
There you go.
and I think he's a good foil for Chris Hemsworth anyway. So Joe Manganiello.
So my pick is Ryan Hurst, which you may not recognize, but if you Google Ryan Hurst, you'll see pretty quickly why.
Yeah.
He was in Sons of Anarchy. He played Opie.
Oh,
I for like
The most crushing moment on TV ever.
Yeah, for like 8 years of my life, every time I was out in public, somebody would say, "Do you know you look like Opie from Sons of Anarchy?" And I'd be like, I don't watch that show. And then I finally watched the show and I was like, yeah, all right, I get it. Okay. And that guy is Ryan Hurst. And I think that he would be really, really good as a foil to Chris Hemsworth, as kind of a like downer and dirtier version of Thor.
the grungy Thor.
Yeah. He's also in Walking Dead. Not relevant.
And remember the Titans, apparently.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. There's my bit on Perun.
So I'm going to wrap it up with at least one of the last heroes, at least the last one we'll talk about today. So I'm going to tell you about Darkstar. So Matt had already mentioned Darkstar earlier. Lenia Petrovna. So she debuted along with her brother, which her brother's name is Nikolai. They debuted in 1976 in Champions #7. The storyline was, wouldn't you guess it, the man who created Black Widow, because Black Widow and the KGB are the through line of everything we do. The answer to that question is Alexei Bruskin, if you were curious about the man who created Black Widow, but that's fine.
I wasn't, but thanks.
Well, you'll be interested in this. In 1976, they debuted fighting against Angel and Ghost Rider. Because...
What a weird team.
Yeah, because teams were weird back then. I think that was still a time where they're like, man, we've got all these heroes. What happens if we just like pick them out of a hat and put them on teams and call the teams champions and see what happens?
I really like that pair up just because someone thought they were really, really clever pairing Angel with, with the devil character.
Angel and the devil,
yeah.
I'd watch that show. I'd watch 4 seasons of that show.
So Lenia and her brother, who ends up becoming Vanguard, they're both mutants, much like Ursa Major. Her thing is that she has access to the Dark Force dimension and can pull energy from it. Can pull energy from the Dark Force to do whatever it is she wants to do. So the Dark Force is much like the Speed Force.
Oh,
it is
so
much like
she's Green Lantern.
Chaos energy. Yeah,
She's Russian Green Lantern.
She is very similar to Russian Green Lantern.
Oh, you have that here in the notes. Okay,
it's there in the notes. So she can create physical structures out of Dark Force. She flies using Dark Force. She can teleport herself and others using Dark Force. It's really just she can do Captain Marvel / Green Lantern-esque things, all because of the Dark Force. Levitate, fly at subsonic speeds. Much like some of the other heroes we've talked about, wouldn't you know it, she was trained by the KGB and the Black Widow. She was also part of that team with Ursa Major that ended up breaking good, and they kind of sided with Captain America and the Avengers for help, and became the Winter Guard. So she ends up dying at some point. Sasha Rorik appears as the new Dark Star, and then, unfortunately, due to plot, the Dark Force transforms that person into a multi-tentacled beast made of pure Dark Force energy. And, yep, wouldn't you know it? So she's killed. Then another Dark Star, this is the third iteration, Rena Stanikoff, takes the mantle. She dies. And then what we had talked about earlier, wouldn't you know it, that evil force that tried to take control of the former Dark Star's body is overwhelmed by Dark Force energy, and then the original Linnea takes back over control of her own body that she lost to start with. So the current and technically former Dark Star is Linnea Petrovna, and she is in the Winter Guard. And it just seemed like a really long get around of, we liked this character, we killed this character, we're 3 more versions in, no one's interested in this person anymore, whatever. Let's just, like, bring her back, I guess. Yep. Sure. It's some, like, Phoenix Force shit.
Oh.
Just, you're back now.
Yep.
You're good. And yeah, so she effectively plays the Green Lantern flying powerhouse, create shit, teleport people, fly around, role in the Winter Guard. Yeah, there's not a ton about her, which is unfortunate because she's just too busy dying and coming back as a new character and then ultimately coming back again in the end.
She's the Captain Marvel role.
Yeah. So we're looking for strong female lead who will punch, teleport, and create stuff. I don't know, again, if we're talking about would they end up in the MCU, be a cool flashback, maybe a cool head nod, a wink in Black Widow, but I do not see them putting Dark Star into Black Widow. But if they were to bring Dark Star to the MCU, what actress would you want to see cast? Andrew, what dead Russian famous imperial person are you going to reference?
Well, I already X'd out on my Wikipedia tab, so I was actually going to bring up a very real person, Mila Jovovich.
Oh, yeah, that's
okay,
really nice.
Yeah,
I figured I'd get one real one in there.
Yeah, that's a good answer. That's a real good answer, actually.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Kyle, Matt, what are your thoughts?
I went a little younger with Florence Pugh. Is that how you say that last name?
She's already in this MCU movie that is coming up.
She's already in the Winter
She is
Guard.
the new Black Widow in this movie that we're talking about.
That's probably why you thought of her, because she's
That's
already
fair.
in the Winter Guard.
Because she's already in the commercials for this movie.
Well, I haven't really watched any of the ads, so
That's okay. They stopped airing the ads because it's not going to come out.
And she's dating Zach Braff, who's like 20 years older than her now.
I don't like that.
Ooh.
It's true. It's true.
It's not great.
I also think I have a good answer that is a person whose first name is Mila. I'm going to go with Mila Kunis. I think Mila Kunis would be really good. And she's actually Ukrainian, which I didn't know, but doesn't surprise me.
Oh.
Yeah. My backup choice, though, is somebody else who's a little bit younger. Like, I think Mila Kunis is kind of a good foil to Carol Danvers, slash the person who plays Carol Danvers. Fuck.
Brie Larson.
Brie Larson, thank you. But my other person, I think, is more of a foil to Elizabeth Olsen slash Scarlet Witch, and that's Sophie Simnet, who hasn't been in much, but was in the really bad Netflix adaptation of Daybreak. And I think that she would be a really good character to throw in there.
Yeah, I don't know who this actress is.
She's been in like a Disney Channel thing and a Netflix thing, and I think that she has outacted both of the things that she was in.
Nice. Punching above her weight.
Yep.
My suggestion is Evan Rachel Wood, just because I've been watching a lot of Westworld, and Dolores could just murder a man, and I would applaud. Well, she does. She does murder a lot of people.
And Todd applauds in his living room. He just like Shannon hates it. He just sits there and claps to himself.
I go, yes, Evan Rachel Wood. Murder that corporate stooge.
Murder that man.
Yeah, so that is Darkstar. She dies. She's replaced a couple times. They say meh, and they bring her back with hand wavy magic.
All right.
I think that's really all we've got for the Winter Guard. I mean, we could talk about the Winter Guard for a long time, but it would only get crazier and more convoluted.
I'll pass.
Well, and as you all have seen, there's a good amount of, you know what you like about the Avengers? What if we, follow me, give a hammer and a sickle to that character
and change their costume theme to red?
Yeah, we slap him with a red coat of paint.
Yeah, it's just like I'm sorry, but there's not a lot here.
Right, and it's the same with I assume it's the same with Alpha Flight, the Canadian Avengers, and the other. The other
Captain America with maple syrup drizzled on
I mean,
top.
they literally just use that shorthand so they don't have to spend a whole issue being like, this is Dark Force. Here's all her story. Like you understand. Like Red Guardian is
it's a palette swap.
Yeah,
that's all it is. It's a palette swap.
So that they can dive into the action and have fun.
And maybe we're being a little too critical on it too, because they found a team composition.
I'm not sure we're being that critical. Well, the coolest thing about this is that there's a man bear. That's the coolest thing.
What I'm saying is there is an equation to the successful superhero team. And they said, okay, here is that equation again.
And here it is in Canada now. And here it is in Britain. And we're good.
But that's storytelling. I mean, there's a team composition between the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Always Sunny in Philadelphia, but at least they all have their own wants and needs and abilities.
Ursa Major is Mac, is what you're saying.
That's exactly
is
what I'm
Master
saying.
Splinter Danny DeVito in this?
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, well, on that note, thanks for listening in to another Sidebar episode of Debate This. Follow along with the argument on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at DebateThisCast, and check out our website at debatethiscast.com. If you like what you hear, please leave us a review so more people can hear our nerdy, dumb show. Until next time, I'm Todd Thomas.
I'm Matt. Actress is named Mila all the way down, Cole.
I'm Kyle, the American Wolverine Harper.
I'm Andrew, totally going to reboot an Always Sunny in Philadelphia spinoff using the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Henderson.
Saying thanks for debating with us, and if you think we're long...
listen to a different podcast.
Saying thanks for debating with us, and if you think we're wrong, then you can come fight us behind the swing sets, nerds.